I'm Amanda, the ever hopeful gardener. And if you've been around, you know how much I love composting. Because I talk about composting a lot, I get a lot of questions about composting. Today, I'm going to answer the 7 questions I get most often. First question, and this one I get more often than the others by leaps and bounds, is why is your pile in the shade? Doesn't it need to be in the sun? And the answer is no. Your pile does not need to be in the sun. I choose to put my pile in the shade for several reasons. The first is in the summer, when I am working on the compost and turning it, it's a lot nicer to be in the shade than the sun. Also, where I live, it gets really warm in the summer, and if my pile were in the sun, it would dry out very quickly. Having the proper amount of water in your pile is super important, especially if you're into thermophilic composting like I am, where we're trying to get that pile hot, hot, hot. It's the microorganisms in your pile that are causing it to heat up into that thermophilic range, not the fact that it's in the sun and not the ambient air temperature. I compost through the winter, and even when it's 30 degrees outside, I can get my pile above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So it doesn't really matter where your pile is. You should place your pile with a couple of considerations. Is it close to where you're going to be using the compost? That makes it a lot easier. And is it near a water source? Because you will likely need to add water depending on where you live and the amount of rainfall you get. One other reason I like having it under the tree canopy in the shade is because when we get those deluge thunderstorms in the summer, the pile doesn't get completely soaked and sopping wet and have too much water. Question number 2, will it attract rodents? Mine does not. I live in a suburban area. There are mice. I've never seen a rat, but I'm guessing they're here. We've got opossums, we've got raccoons. We don't have bears, so I cannot speak to safely composting with food scraps with bears. My pile does not attract any wildlife that is not already here. So it's not bringing every mouse from a 25 square radius here. It's not attracting them. And the key is making sure if you are adding food to your compost pile, that you are burying it really well. And if you are extra nervous about attracting wildlife to your pile with food, you can try bokashi composting, bokashi fermentation. Wildlife does not seem to be as attracted to fermented foods. Number 3, does it smell? No, my pile does not smell, but that is because I am carefully making sure to do the correct ratios of brown carbon material to green nitrogen material. If your pile does smell, it's not a big deal, you can fix it. Your pile likely has too much nitrogen or it's too wet. So to combat those issues, you would perform a flip. That's going to add some air to your pile. And as you're flipping it, you're going to add more carbon. If you don't have shredded leaves or wood chips accessible at that time of year, you can even use cardboard. Number 4, is the wood in your compost bin pressure treated? Yes, it is. Because pressure treated wood is no longer treated with arsenic like it used to be. It's treated with a copper product, and it is safe to use to build garden beds and for my composting. It will eventually degrade, but the reason we chose pressure treated is because composting is a decomposition process and the wood would rot a lot more quickly if it were not pressure treated. Number 5, do you start and or finish with carbon or nitrogen? I like to start and finish with carbon because your pile is going to have more carbon than nitrogen. Your pile should be 2/3 carbon to 1/3 nitrogen, and that's just how I like to do it. But there's no right or wrong. But if your nitrogen is food scraps, I definitely recommend not having that be the final layer. Number 6, how often do you turn your pile? There is no exact answer for this. It's honestly when I have the time. If I were being diligent about maintaining a thermophilic pile, having the temperature be over 120, 130 degrees Fahrenheit, I would be turning it every time it dropped below that because it needed something. It either needed air, it needed more water, or it needed more green material. But I don't have time to do that. So the pile gets turned when I have time to turn it. And the way that I know the pile no longer needs to be turned is because once I perform a flip, add air, add water, add more greens, and the pile does not heat up into the thermophilic range, then I know that the pile is ready to enter the mesophilic range, which is a lower temperature decomposition process. Different set of microorganisms move in and they perform a further decomposition than the thermophilic microorganisms were performing. After the pile reaches ambient air temperature, Then I will let it sit and cure for another month or two before I use it in my garden. Number 7, people ask me a lot why they cannot get their pile hot into that thermophilic range. And it could be a couple things. Likely you are underestimating the amount of water that your pile needs. And to know if your pile has the proper amount of water, you want to stick your hand into the pile, pull out a handful. You squeeze it as hard as you can. 1 to 2 drops of water, perfect. You get no water, your pile needs water. And if you have a lot more than that, then your pile is probably too wet and you should flip it and add some more brown. Another reason your pile might not be heating up is because it's not large enough. The minimum size for a pile to get into the thermophilic range is 3 feet wide, 3 feet deep, 3 feet tall. Anything smaller than that, it's probably not going to heat up the way you want it to. Another reason could be you don't have enough nitrogen in your pile. Sources of nitrogen, if you're struggling to find some, include garden clippings that you've recently cut out of your garden, untreated grass clippings, used coffee grounds. You can get them from a local coffee shop. You just have to ask if they mind giving it to you. Food scraps, bokashi ferment. And if you don't have any of those things to add, you can even purchase greens, in that you can go to a feed store and purchase alfalfa cubes or alfalfa pellets, and you can soak them in water and then add them to your pile for a source of green. Those were the 7 most commonly asked questions I get. If you have another compost question, please feel free to drop it in the comments. Check out the caption. I will have listed the video on how we built our bin system, including a cut and materials list in the caption of that video. I'll also list my favorite composting equipment.